This is how you answer an Edexcel exam for papers 1 and 2. And I'll be using the example of the American West 2B for this example. Question 1 will always be, what can you learn from source A about whatever it is? And the source will usually be a photograph or a painting or a picture of some description, and sometimes they throw in a short written source instead. All you need to do is you need to make one point, one thing you can learn from that source. Use the word infer to show that you're thinking about it a bit deeply. Then you need to say, what is it in that source that you can see that helps you to make that point? So for example, you might have a picture of a cowboy making his way through a blizzard. I can infer from the source that the life of a cowboy was very hard, especially in winter when it was cold, because it shows in the source a cowboy really suffering in the middle of a blizzard. 4 points. The next question, you will get a choice. You can choose one thing or another thing, and you need to explain why that thing led to something else, or how that thing led to something else. Now, I recommend that you write 3 clear P paragraphs to answer this question. So in each paragraph, you're making a point. So, for example, if you need to look at how Joseph McCoy helped, how did Joseph McCoy lead to development in the cattle industry? Joseph McCoy set up the town of Abilene will be your point. You can put a bit more evidence, a little bit more detail in. So Abilene was near to the railroads, but you need to explain how that point helps you answer the question. So this meant that people would drive their cattle up to Abilene, and they'd have a good place to trade their cattle, which led to the development of the cattle industry on the plains. So you just need to make 3 clear points. You could probably get away with 2 actually, but make sure you explain how the point helps you to answer the question. Question 3 or 4, you have a choice. And question 3 or 4 will always be a why question. So on this paper in front of me, why was there a problem of law and order in mining towns in the 1840s? Now for this question, again, it's 12 points, so you need to write 3 paragraphs. All right? Here's one reason why law and order was a problem, for example. And I'm going to put a bit more evidence in there, a little bit more detail, and then I'm going to explain why is it that thing was a problem, or why is it that you said leads to the thing you're explaining why it happened. Okay, so you're making 3 different points. Now, the conclusion, this is why you get an extra few marks. A conclusion, you can do one of 2 things. One thing you can do is you can say, out of these 3 reasons why this thing happened, this one was the most important because, or you could say in the conclusion, look, these 3 reasons, there's a theme connecting them, and this is the theme that connects them. All right? The latter conclusion will probably get more likely to get you into the higher mark bracket. Question 5 or 6, you have a choice of A and B. Now remember, question 5 or 6 is half the amount of marks on the paper, and the final question B is where your spelling, punctuation and grammar is being marked, or quality of written communication, which you'll get an extra 3 marks for. So be careful in the last question of your spelling. So question 5 or 6A will always be describe. Describe something. So in this example, describe the difficulties faced by the early migrants travelling west by wagon train in the 1840s. So this is quite a simple skill, describing. So you just need to say one of the problems that they faced were the rivers. Maybe you need to explain why that is a problem, so the rivers might flood and wash them away, for example. Now again, I recommend you make 3 separate points to really show the examiner that you have got that knowledge. But again, you could probably just settle for 2. Now, the final question, question 5 or 6B, is 16 points. All right? I often suggest to my pupils that they start with this one whilst their mind is fresh. For this, there's always going to be a statement. So in this one, the leadership of Brigham Young was the most important reason for the success of the Mormons in establishing a settlement at Salt Lake City. Right? It's always a statement. And it says, do you agree with it? Now, to get into the higher mark bands, you need to show a balanced judgment. So, you need to say, well, on one hand, show the hands there, on one hand, I do agree with the statement because of these 3 points, but on the other hand, I don't agree with these statements because of these 3 points. In conclusion, I actually disagree, or I actually do agree. And then quickly summarise the key reason why you do agree or you disagree. For top levels, for the top marks of that, you need to try and weave in an argument as well. So do an introduction saying, clearly this statement is wrong. This is why this statement is wrong. But some people might say it's right because of these reasons, but clearly they're wrong because of this. So you're weaving in that sense of an argument. There's 50 points in the paper, and it is 1.5 minutes per point that you need to focus on. So for a 4-point question, you've got 6 minutes to answer it. I recommend you use a good chunk of that time to just sit and think, and to do a quick plan before you start writing, because it's the thinking, the planning and the structure that gets you the marks. It isn't a huge tsunami of factual information. Good luck.